Hi, everybody. Welcome. I am Julie Fautino, and I am grateful to serve as the Executive Director of Away Home Washington. I want to recognize that in addition to our celebration event today, today marks the start of Indigenous History Month and Pride Month. Woohoo! Go Pride. In our work, we recognize and are working to eradicate the fact that LGBTQ plus youth and young people comprise up to 40% of the homeless population and are 120% more likely to experience homelessness than non-LGBTQ youth. We also acknowledge that all of us occupy unceded and traditional territories. We acknowledge that the Indigenous communities throughout Washington state, who were the first stewards of this land, still live, work, and build community here today. We would also like to recognize the historical and systemic exploitation and oppression of Indigenous peoples and other historically oppressed communities, which has led to the disproportionality and representation of these communities amongst young people, the young people we serve and whose voices we seek to elevate. This month also marks Juneteenth. We do not forget for a moment that Black lives matter, and therefore we are committed daily to ending the injustice of disproportionality that exists in the youth and young adult homeless system and beyond, and that continues to harm Black lives. This is why we're all together in this movement. I welcome you all. We are here to celebrate the achievements of this past legislative session, not just legislative wins, but the coming together of community of folks who came together to make this happen. We are all part of an audacious movement that has the audacity to believe that homelessness for young people is both preventable and we can eradicate it. And we will also persist until this is completely true. A person who has lived that belief and has been with the Way Home Washington from the time it was a tiny seed of an audacious idea is Mrs. Trudi Inslee, the First Lady of our state. Mrs. Inslee has always been there for this movement and has never hesitated to speak truth into important spaces and support this work. This legislative session has been no exception to her leadership and support. I also want to thank and acknowledge other folks who have been there since day one, including, and I can't see him right now, Jim Theophilus, Away Home Washington's first executive director. Mrs. Inslee, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Julie. I really appreciate being included today. It's such a great day for celebration. In fact, we're going to put up the gay pride flag over at the Capitol in just a little bit. So I'll be leaving this a little bit early to go participate in that. So appreciate your acknowledgement of everything that's going on this month. And I just want to congratulate everybody on all the great work that everybody has done. As Jim taught everybody way back at the beginning, is go out and tell your personal stories to the legislators. That makes the most difference in the world and to the community. And all of your collaboration and connection with one another and a lot of hard work, compiling all of the data and working with local housing resources. And I'm preaching to the choir here. You know more than I do everything that entails. And just want you to know the whole state, Jay and I appreciate so much what Away Home Washington has accomplished because of all of the individuals who are tirelessly working on this and sharing their lived experience and their personal stories of persistence and success. So congratulations to everyone. Thank you to the philanthropy partnerships that we have and the legislators and the community support, but most of all to the young people who are out there sharing their stories. And to you, Julie, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Inslee. We love and appreciate you so much. I also wanted to give a special shout out today to Representative Macri, who's with us, who I just have to say, we just have a lot of love for and has played such a key role during this session. Rep. Macri is with Seattle and is one of our legislative champions. And she came in during the final days of session to make sure that what you're going to hear is the HPDF. I know it's kind of a long name, but it's the Homeless Prevention and Diversion Fund. to make sure that it was fully funded at $5 million. We asked for $4 million more to include new anchor communities, and also to recognize that it's been so successful that communities are busting at the seams in terms of need, and you really came through. I wanted to give you an opportunity if you had anything you'd like to say.
Really, thank you so much. And I'll just echo what First Lady Trudi Inslee said. I'm just so grateful to all of you for the tremendous work that you've done to, first of all, carry the work every single day on behalf of young people who've experienced homelessness in communities across the state. And secondly, to just be so strategic and smart about how you carry your message. There's such tight alignment between all of the partners, and the ability to carry that message to the legislature when we're under time crunches related to the budget is great. The fact that Kim Justice can just underscore the message because you have a complete and total alignment with the Office of Homeless Youth, and to see the messages reflected in the media stories. I'm just really, really grateful for the many people who've shared their personal experiences with housing instability and homelessness to really make this real for people who have the great privilege and responsibility, like I do, to sit in positions of decision making. So I'm just really grateful for my relationship and partnership with you all, and for the work that you do every single day. So many things to celebrate and a lot more work ahead. And I'm looking forward to doing that work together with you all. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Rep. Macri. We appreciate you. I also just want to introduce now our wonderful, and I know there are so many people to thank, but I do want to do a special call out to our advocacy team. And this is the first time we've kind of put together kind of a cross-section advocacy team in Away Home Washington. And there are several levels. So one, I just want to give a special shout out, and you're going to hear from him, to our amazing lobbyist, Sam Martin. Shout out, lots of love to Sam, people, hearts, everything. Sam was just like in it to win it for us. And we're so grateful every day to work with him. Also, we had another person that joined us this year, Jessa Lewis, who I think is a legislative whisperer, and really helped us with our first ever advocacy day, and making really incredible connections. We had like 30 meetings with legislators. And Jessa was absolutely instrumental in that. And then also other members of our team. So Tasha Croydon, Tasha in the house, everybody knows Tasha. Tasha is like the hub to all these different spokes. So love to Tasha. And then Ben Sung Henry is with our strategic communications team, and our communications department has been formed to answer the question, how do you use this method at the end of the day to say that you are working to end and prevent homelessness for young people? So it is not just a look at us. It really is putting the strategy in comm. So Ben Sung Henry, Deontay Cruz with that team in the house, and also our first ever communications fellow, Kaylee McLeod Bueno. Kaylee, I don't see you at the moment, but Kaylee was there on the ground. I want to make sure I'm not missing any. And I also just want to say Kiki Sarantes also, and ACI directors, our former director, Ashley, and then our two co-directors right now, Cecily and Isaac. Everybody came together. And then I don't want to forget our board member, Shelia Babb Anderson, who is an amazing advocate in her own right, irrespective of whatever job she's holding. She's incredible. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Sam.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time today. Has been an amazing legislative session, and we accomplished so much. Very similar to what Julie just said. There's a lot of thank yous to go around, and so we're just so appreciative of our anchor community folks. We are so appreciative of our legislators. We're so appreciative of our advocacy community. We really couldn't have done what we did this legislative session without you all. I'm just going to run through a couple high-level pieces of some of the things we accomplished this legislative session. Um, First and foremost, what you've heard about so far already is the expansion of the Homeless Prevention and Diversion Fund. We were advocating for a $4 million increase to that, and we're able to achieve that again with the help of all of you coming together, sending emails, coming down for Advocacy Day, all the efforts that really just continue to be able to move that work forward, telling stories, just uplifting the importance and the priority of increasing that fund. And we were really able to do it. And I don't want to underscore how important and how amazing it was that we were able to do that this session, and really being able to just come together as a community to do that. Some of the other pieces that passed, or that some of the other things that we were able to achieve, was House Bill 1406, youth access to shelter. This would create a pathway for youth under the age of 18 to self-consent to shelter, preventing situations where they're forced to return home and live in unsafe environments. This is a huge piece of legislation that got passed. This was something that has been worked on for years and years, and like being able to achieve it with so much support throughout our legislature was a huge achievement and accomplishment. So give yourself a pat on the back, a hand clap for that one as well too. And in collaboration or in coordination with that, there was also another bill, Senate Bill 5599, that also passed, that also again provides support and safety for trans young people to be able to just get gender affirming care. That again is another huge piece that was worked on collectively by our community. Being able to work with our partners at OHY and to see the amazing $4.6 million or $46 million increase at the Department of Commerce that ultimately allows for all grantees at OHY to get a 10% increase. This again impacts all of our work and makes sure that we can continue to serve the people in our communities in the way that we need to. But it also demonstrates the amazing partnership and coordination that we have with the Office of Homeless Youth. Shout out to you, Kim Justice. And other pieces of our work, like supporting our partners at Building Changes and helping them to get House Bill 1622 passed with the Homeless Student Stability Program. And the list goes on and on and on with so many amazing things that we were able to achieve and accomplish this legislative session. I just want to continue to give you all a huge pat on the back, a huge thank you. We could not have done it without you all. This is the importance and the crux of the work. And now we get to celebrate and say thank you to everybody. Those are my updates.
That is so awesome. I'm going to talk with y'all a little bit about the Homelessness Prevention and Diversion Fund. A lot of us on this call probably have heard about it or work within it or spent our time advocating this last session for it. But just so we're all on the same page about why this is such an exciting expansion, the Homelessness Prevention and Diversion Fund was formerly called the Centralized Diversion Fund because it is a centralized diversion program, and it's built on two core elements: creative conversations about housing solutions that are driven by young people, and providing flexible funding to those young folks to make those housing solutions happen when that funding is needed. The centralized approach really is seeking to create this no wrong door system where young folks can access this resource in the places they are already visiting with the people they trust most. And since launching in 2020, we've trained and certified almost 450 providers across agencies and system roles across the now 5 HPDF communities. So from homeless youth workers, schools, tribes, YABs, and lots more. This last year really showed us that HPDF utilization is just continuing to increase year after year, which was a huge reason why we wanted to advocate for an expansion of the dollars, with all of our communities running out of HPDF dollars before renewal. But despite this, providers and admins, I have to really just create some space now for everyone to give you some like emojis and snaps, because y'all are just so dedicated to young people that you didn't let this slow you down, and you just kept housing young folks. And it's really because of you why we're seeing the success in HPDF right now. So since August, we've housed August 2020, we've housed 929 young folks. So we are on track to house 1,000 young folks by the end of summer, fingers crossed. As of now, at the 3-month mark, almost 96% of all youth and young adults are still housed. And interesting, about 70% of all requests were for YYA needing a prevention resource. So that means they were either couch surfing, doubled up, or at imminent risk of losing their housing upon entry. And our requests are averaging about a little more than 2,000 per household. This is so important because time and time again, young people, they know what they need, and diversion makes it possible for them to get what they need. So young people need creative, flexible options for housing. And this makes it possible for them to attain and define home by their own standards. So the last couple of things I'll say is just we have some exciting things going forward, and the impact of HPDF is stretching beyond just even our anchor communities. Our current HPDF communities with this new expanded funding will not be running out months before renewal, and we'll be able to house more people than we did even this year. We're going to be able to continue expanding it to our other anchor communities. So shout out to Clark County and Terrell and Morgan Sunny over there, who just is our most recent to join the HPDF family and has just really hit the ground running. And Thurston, Jefferson Clallam, Skagit for being next up to launch. So thank you all. And it has paved pathways for diversion projects and other Flex Fund pilots to be starting to pop up across the state, specifically for youth and young adults. So we always like to give shout out to our partners, Building Changes, who really spearheaded the centralized model with Africa Town, and has partnered with us recently to launch a diversion project for youth and young adults exiting systems of care, who've exited systems of care. That's called the Youth Diversion Infrastructure Project. Lots of y'all probably have heard us talk about it, heard Dimitri talk about it. But that launched, we had our first request come in late February, and we have housed almost 50 people already with that in the 5 communities where it's active. So yeah, thank you all for making this work possible and helping us continue to meet the need of young folks as this resource continues to just blow up in communities. And I think I'm passing it to Deontay after that, but if y'all have any questions for me, I'll respond in the chat if they're like diversion specific or when's your next training, all that good stuff. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kiki. Hello, everybody. My name is Deontay Cruz. I'm the Strategic Communications Manager with the Way Home Washington. As you've heard from all of the people before me up to this point, everything that we've accomplished this year has been a major like wind under our wings that have allowed us to sort of move forward with this work with the expansion of the HPDF and getting the full funding for the ACI so we can continue to do the work in 10 communities that we are currently working in right now. So we are extremely happy about that. And for these efforts, we want to be able to recognize 6 key people in the legislature who have been champions for us during the legislature, during our time during the legislative session. So I am going to share my screen for a second and pull up some slides. Perfect. So yes, as I was saying, there are 6 key folks who we would like to give a shout out to, starting with Senator Trudeau for her work championing bills that are important to our communities. Senator Billig for his assistance on the budget and leadership in getting things done this year. Representative Macri for her work on the budget fixes and working to address disproportionality throughout Washington. Rep. Sin for her efforts on the bills to fix systems of care. Rep. Riccelli for his work on the budget and for leading the efforts on accessible healthcare for all. Representative Levitt for being our champion on amendments and getting things passed for us. Those folks have worked very closely with us, along with all of the other folks that you have heard speak up to this point, and those who you'll hear continue to speak after this point. But I just want to take a moment to pause and recognize them for their efforts and just give the floor to those folks to say a few words if they would like, before I pass it to Jessa to say a few words.
I definitely want to thank, this list of folks. There are folks who met with our community members during the first advocacy day. There are people who worked on the budget, people who helped champion the bills that are important to us. And it is definitely a team effort, but I also want to take a moment and thank the staff for these legislators. It's a legislative staff that make a lot of these things happen, attend the meetings, and we just appreciate the working relationship we have with staff and our elected officials, and I'll pass it on.
Perfect. So there are a couple folks from the communities who showed up for us throughout this year from our anchor communities that we want to sort of give an opportunity to spotlight. But before we do that, I just want to say how big of a moment this is for us to host our first advocacy day ever for Away Home Washington this year. That came on the heels of a 3-day event comprising of 60 folks from across 10 different counties in Washington who are dedicated to end youth and young adult homelessness by reaching functional zero. On that third day, we had 60 folks from the communities descend on the Capitol grounds who engaged 30 legislators over the course of a couple hours. And during our most critical moments, when we needed folks to reach out to legislators and push, we were able to mobilize. Sorry, let me reframe that. Folks showed up and mobilized. Over 400 different emails were sent out in a time frame of 2 hours. And I think that speaks not only to the community that we have here, but the amount of momentum that we have in the state of Washington and folks who really care about ending youth and young adult homelessness. And so at this point, I want to give some space to folks from our communities who are on the ground doing the work, who are pushing for folks to get housed, who are pushing for the change in the communities, who are taking these resources that we're advocating for and pushing those forward, and give them a chance to talk about the significance of the work in their communities and attending Advocacy Day. And so from our cohort 1 communities, I want to give an opportunity for Gage to be able to step up and talk a little bit about his work with ACI, HPDF, and the YAB work in his community. Gage, are you here with us?
Yeah, hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, cool. Thanks everybody for this opportunity. Yeah, I'm someone with lived experience with homelessness here in Spokane, and so this opportunity, seeing living as a young person with lived experience and working alongside other young people with lived experience, having the ability to do this alongside Away Home Washington, to meet with many folks here in the room, whether it's in an office or at the airport or at a crosswalk, maybe not on the same day, really embodying what it means to let the people who these acts or legislative acts impact the most help decide how they function. So young people being in the space, advocating and taking action for this change, being a part of that is incredible. And I want to thank everybody here for making it happen, whether that's Deontay, the Away Home Washington team getting us there, or the legislators getting it done. So thank you all for this, for being here and for letting me speak a little bit.
Thank you, Gage. Thank you for showing up and saying a few words. We really appreciate you. And as many of you know, that this work wouldn't be able to move forward without those on the ground in community, actually working with the young people, actually showing up every day, actually pushing the resources, actually doing this work. And so Gage, you are a very important part of that. We want to recognize you. So Gage was somebody from one of our cohort 1 communities, our original 4 out in Spokane. And I want to recognize sort of the difference that we had sort of expanded into what we call a different cohort of communities, which is cohort 2. And so I want to recognize that we also have some folks from our newer communities that we've begun to do work with. And so I want to give the floor to Athena and Blue, who I believe are present with us here today, to say a few words as well. Athena or Blue, are you with us?
Hi, I can go.
Oh, perfect.
Hi, everyone. I'm Athena. My pronouns are she, they. I work with the YMCA Youth Action Board up in Skagit County, and I attended the ACI learning session back in February. One of the things I thought was positive at the learning session was the chance I had to meet and collaborate with dozens of other people with lived experience of youth homelessness. It felt really inspiring to see such a large community in person and what felt like driven by a common purpose, ending youth homelessness. It felt great to see the things we were already doing at the Youth Action Board brought to such a large scale, as well as with the support of organizations and legislators from across the state. Now, when it comes to HPDF, I'm not so familiar, but if it is acquired and if it is used for training community leaders properly on youth homelessness and youth rights, that is a positive. Education on this issue would help communities hold themselves responsible for the minors and young adults that we have neglected and allowed to live in dire instability. It is my hope that moving forward, the individuals here, as well as throughout the other organizations in Washington State, continue to educate themselves on the systems that perpetuate youth homelessness, the laws that prevent minors from accessing stable housing, shelter, or healthcare, and the culture around children and childhood itself, which allows us to abuse, neglect, and ignore these people without consequence. Thank you for your time.
Perfect. Thank you for your words, Athena. Blue, are you here with us today? Okay. So moving on, last but not least, I want to give the space to one of our ACI coordinators who is here with us today representing one of our cohort 2 communities. I don't really have favorites, but what I can say is I know for a fact that this person has been killing it in their community and has led what I call the new wave into all this different change in our cohort 2 communities. And so without further ado, I want to give the floor to Terrell Berry to say a few words.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. I'm the ACI coordinator for Clark County, and representing cohort 2. You know, we're the new ones, but we're getting a lot of stuff done together. So I'm excited to speak about some of the stuff that we did. I mean, just the advocacy work. I'm just thinking about, like, before this work, I just thought I was just like a piece on the chessboard, just like doing whatever I have to do to help clients. But I never realized the impact of advocacy work. Like, I always thought, you know, I'm pretty much voting. Whenever I get the ballot, I'll be like, I'm voting for the lesser of two evils. Let's see which one has a cooler name, or which one has some of my values. But now I'm able to see who I'm voting for and also hold them accountable. So like when they're saying that they're going to do a certain thing, making sure they get it done and not just pissing on me and calling it rain. So I'm able to hold them accountable and let them know, like, hey, this is what's going on in our community. So I'm able to advocate for youth, our people, period, but advocate for youth and amplify their voice whenever they want. So, and going to Advocacy Day, it helped out a lot. It helped me get over my fear of talking to legislators. So I was able to get to know some of my people in my district. I mean, I've been knowing a few of the legislators, like from the 49th district and things like that, but I was able to get to know a lot of them and just realize that they're human, and it's not always they're not always against you. Sometimes they just don't have the knowledge, they don't know the experience. Sometimes they're somewhat far removed from it. So they're like, what is a penny? I'm like, no, this is what this is. So I'm glad that I was able to do that, and I'm glad that I was able to network with people across the state. Just seeing the people in this room, we were able to hang out in February and just meet with folks. And also, yeah, just seeing, I don't know the numbers, I was trying to look it up, but our dashboard is down, of how many HPDF requests we were able to do in Clark alone. We've only done this since December, and I think we had over 100 requests already for HPDF. And I'm seeing it work through our case conferencing too. So in case conferencing, we get at least like 4 to 6 people that are housed through HPDF each time we do case conferencing. So that's just one of the ways that I'm seeing this work being done. So I know that was a lot, but just wanted to let that out.
So last but not least, I just want to say thank you, Terrell, for your words. Thank you for saying all that you've said, and thank you for everything that you've done to help move this work forward in your community, and partner with other communities across borders in Washington. Before I pass it on to Julie, I just want to say that you all have got the opportunity to hear about folks who are doing the work on the ground in the anchor communities, hearing about how they'll be able to take the resources that we've all advocated for and continue to make an impact in the lives of young folks who are experiencing homelessness in Washington, and help push our state towards a yes to yes state where hopefully one day we won't have to work to end youth and young adult homelessness. So now I want to take the opportunity to pass it to Julie, who's going to say a few words.
Hi, folks. So thank you so much, Terrell, Athena, Engage for speaking out. But I also really want to honor, I see a lot of folks who participated in Advocacy Day and have been participating in advocacy, and just want to love on you too for showing up. I see Pink is in the room. Let me see who else. LCYC in the house, really represented. Christina. I know I'm going to miss people, but I just see a lot of folks who, Libby on our team, who played a role. So many folks who showed up that really made this happen. And so I hope you feel that you are bringing it for your communities too. I want to turn to have a conversation with some of our kind of key leaders and champions in this work. We want to welcome Kim Justice, who's the Executive Director of the Office of Homeless Youth for the state, Representative Riccelli from the Spokane 3rd District, and Shelia Babb Anderson, who's a Senior Program Officer with the Campion Foundation and is a skilled advocate in her own right. All of you have contributed to, led, or supported the work in various and important ways. Again, we're all in this movement together and have various important roles to play, and we'd love to chat with you about those. So starting with you, Kim, esteemed leader of the Office of Homeless Youth, please share with us, from your perspective, why is the ACI important in the effort to prevent and end homelessness for young people in Washington?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. And I'm honored to be here. So thanks for inviting me into the space. Yeah, I think there are a few kind of key features of the Anchor Community Initiative that I believe give us the best shot of actualizing the goal to prevent and end youth homelessness. So like first that comes to mind is that this is community-based. It's rooted in the people, the data, and the unique characteristics of each community. I think most of us know that there are probably no two communities in this state that are alike. Washington State is a mix of rural, urban communities, differing racial demographics, got college towns, industry towns, communities with tribal lands and large indigenous populations. And so the solutions and approaches are not a one size fits all. And I think the Anchor Community Initiative being rooted in community, as well as providing that, sort of framework and for goal setting and collaboration at the local level is really fundamental. And then secondly, and alongside that, not only is this a homegrown kind of effort and a homegrown nature to the initiative, there are also really core unified approaches that unite communities. And there's a backbone of support and organization provided by Away Home Washington. So folks are working in their communities, but are also able to come together and be united around how folks are working together. And it's really a common theme that I've seen through the years with folks doing this work, and that's both young people and service providers, that sometimes this work can feel kind of isolating, especially if you're in a remote and rural community. There can be a lack of connection to peers working on youth homelessness across the state, and really a desire to connect on similar challenges and to learn from each other. And I'm just coming off the back of a 3-day event we hosted at the Office of Homeless Youth last week. Some of you were there. We brought together 60 young people from across the state to inform our funding decisions. And it was really important work, but I think maybe the most valuable benefit of that was seeing young people from so many different communities from across the state be able to have a place and an opportunity to connect with each other, to find friendship and connection over their shared lived experiences and their shared passion to make change. And I don't think we should underestimate that power of connection. And I think the Anchor Community Initiative and Away Home Washington provides that. I mean, look at this space right here. There are folks from all over the state and working in different capacities and coming to this work with a variety of perspectives and roles. And I think that just, it makes the work stronger. It's like we're stronger and we're smarter when we're working together. And then the last thing I'll say, and I'm saying it last, but it's actually probably maybe the most important, which is that this work is centered on eliminating racial disproportionality as a key outcome and really narrowing in on addressing the needs of BIPOC and LGBTQ plus youth, because we know that if we can solve homelessness for those that are most deeply impacted, then we can solve it for all young people. And, that means analyzing the data and outcomes along race and LGBTQ identity, so that when we evaluate our efforts, we're not just asking the question, is this working? But we're asking, for whom is this working? And ACI and Away Home Washington has leaned in so strong on that commitment to undoing racial disparities, and it's such a critical element in this initiative.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kim. And that is exactly right. Yes, thank you for your words of wisdom. I have one more question for you, and that is, what are you excited about for the future of kind of Away Home Washington, OHY, ACI work together?
Everything about this is exciting, to be honest. Like, I can't, like, the things that, the feelings that come to me around this work is just pure optimism and hope. And so I am really excited about the future. I think it's been said multiple times in this space that this is a movement. Like, that really is what we're doing. We're building a movement together. And in some ways it can develop a life of its own because it's molded and it's shaped by the people who are part of it. And so I'm really excited about the growth of this movement and seeing what ideas and energy get brought to the table as this work expands. And I see a lot of growth happening right now. There's expansion of more communities that are now part of this effort. There's growth and expansion in the tools and the funding that we have available to tackle homelessness. And I see innovation and learning happening every day that are improving the way that we do things. So I'm also just really excited about the young people who are part of this movement, and really not just part of it, but leading it. I think I've seen that dynamic shifting more and more, that young people are really leading these efforts, and I'm excited about the growth of that and growing that youth engagement together and bringing young people into the work as leaders, as consultants, as paid professionals. The last thing I'd reflect on just in this partnership that we have with our office and Away Home Washington is that we share a vision. And I think that's like not to be taken lightly. That's huge. Like, we are working together toward a vision, and it's a big and a bold vision. We have different roles in how we're working toward that vision, but I think that it provides important partnership and somewhat of like a symbiotic relationship where we get to learn from each other, and that learning makes us better. And I've seen, the work of ACI push up against the system in really healthy ways to create change and to make our policies and funding at the state level better. And so I think that relationship is really important. And we get to be in this work together and also hold each other accountable, and ultimately accountable to the young people that we're serving.
Thanks so much, Kim. And we love sharing audacious goals with your office, as well as shaping each other's work in, I think, important ways. And I just also want to shout out, you guys are already starting on your legislative agenda development for next year, which will be still in my heart. But one of them, just to speak into the room, if I may, is really about a whole other level of support for youth engagement and youth action boards that I think is going to be really exciting for us all to get behind. I would love to now turn our attention and esteem to Representative Riccelli. You are a champion for improving the health of all Washingtonians, especially those who are economically disadvantaged. How does housing our youth and young adults fit into this work?
Well, thank you for being here and for allowing me a few minutes to engage with y'all. Before I start, you know, I have kind of a mantra when I'm speaking with folks, and it's like, never want to be the person who's speaking right before lunch, but I'm got an asterisk now. Don't also want to be the person who's speaking after Kim, because she had a lot to bring. So I also do really want to recognize it's so nice to see First Lady Inslee here. I've worked with her and the legislature's worked with her, and you know, from youth suicide prevention to protecting access for essential healthcare. She's been a leader, and for one of my favorites, which I bug probably too much, but on making sure that we have access to food. She's been a real leader, and I look forward to recruiting her into the legislature after the governor finishes his term, if that's possible. So she's a real advocate. So, you know, healthcare is a right and housing is a right. And I think fundamentally, thanks to folks like you all and so many others, we've shifted the framework around social determinants of health, the social drivers of health, to understand that housing is healthcare. And so for me, I think about that all the time. I also think about things like food access, et cetera, education, but housing particularly is healthcare. I think about some of our most vulnerable as they leave hospitals, and we say, great, you got some of that care in our hospital system, but now go get better. Well, you don't have a roof over your head. That doesn't make much sense. That's not going to I think about our folks struggling with behavioral health crisis and, you know, with all the other added stresses to just trying to get well. If you don't have a stable place, I don't think we're going to get there. For me, a lot of it was impacting my education. I was lucky and privileged to go to Gonzaga, and they taught me about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is something core to me. And we want people to get to a place where they can thrive and get to that top tier of self-actualization. But if those basics are not being met and we're not stepping up as a community to provide those, you know, we're not doing right. So for me, the policy interventions that will make a difference will be making sure that people have access to the basics. And that's what I remain focused on. We have a long way to go. The pushing from folks with lived experience is just so critical, the personal stories. And I think particularly the youth movement, and I'll tell you why. Right or wrong, some of my colleagues will look at the adult populations and the older populations and say they've had their chance. I think that, you know, it's a harsh way to look at it, but we're able to open up the conversations around young people. And so that advocacy helps talk about the broader homelessness population and housing crisis. And so I'm just so grateful for the work you're doing. I'm grateful for seeing some of the friendly faces on here. You know, Jessica can text me. Ben was a graduate professional student senate vice president, a position I had, and just seeing people put action to work. And I think, you know, we need to focus on those things, those social determinants of health, and housing is right up there with the basics with food and healthcare and education.
Thank you so much, you know, for your comments. I'd have to say that I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. We had so many folks participate in Advocacy Day, and this was their first time. And we even had, I would say that half of the folks who showed up for Advocacy Day were young people who are part of this movement, and they were incredible advocates. I'm an attorney, and I thought I could contribute to, you know, helping people advocate. Nobody needed my help. Folk were like very, very compelling and able, totally on their own without my 2 cents. But I know a lot of people caught the advocacy bug, and we would love to hear from you. If, you know, do you have advice for folks who want to get deeper into the advocacy pool, and folks who now kind of have a new awakening of the power of advocacy?
Well, first and foremost, I really love what Terrell said. You know, folks in the legislature, humans, you know, like I might have the best day in the world where I just I killed it and just, you know, we passed some big legislation and my wife's like, oh, the cat box is full, you know, like we're humans. We're trying to get through life too, and making those personal connections. You know, I can't speak for every office, but the period of time we're in right now is referred to as the interim. This is a great time to just ask people to meet for a you know, at a coffee shop, invite them to a place that you're working with, you know, like Crosswalk, et cetera, in Spokane, to have those kinds of discussions. But more importantly, so in Spokane, it's interesting, you know, like 30 was looked at as kind of young, right? And that's not the case. But when I decided to run for office, you know, kind of got patted on the head and said, wait your turn. And my big thing for you is like, don't wait your turn. It's not a seat at the table, it's your table. And, you know, it's also doing the other side and participating. You know, a robust democracy can only exist with an active and engaged citizenry, and that includes participating and supporting the folks who are aligned with you. But take that aside, whether you align with somebody or not, doing the hard work to chat with folks and ask them, put it on them. And you know what, to their peril if they're not listening and communicating. But for young people, my thing is, you all have solutions. And for those folks who have walked those, walk those steps, you have ideas that can impact and improve and bring policy interventions and budget items. So I guess also keep us accountable. I heard that from Terrell. I heard wisdom from Gage and Athena. We need to see all of our community members. And I would say it can be frustrating that the legislature turns over quite a bit. So you might just be at that point where you have got your ally or your advocate, and they might go off to do something else, run for something else, take another job. It's constant education. And so my pitch also is not only to do it, but to really work to continually focus on that and embrace those new folks. Because as people come in, that's like an open book, and you get to help them write their story of their career, and you don't know what can matter. I don't want to take up too much time, but I'll just give you one example. I've been working a lot over the last decade on oral health. That solely goes back to a meeting I had with Community Action Network, where I met a gentleman named Aaron Robert Kaufman, who was low income, who was in and out of emergency rooms because of oral health issues. And that totally changed my framework. Aaron's not with us. He passed away because of complications largely due to oral health. But I just want to just share that to say I've spent over a decade working on oral health because of one conversation I had post being elected, but before being sworn in. So just know that your stories matter and they can really impact us. And so that's my advice. And I also want to say, great. I'm honored that you would recognize the number of us as champions, et cetera. Like, again, getting back to the accountability, that's our job. And so, that's what we signed up to do. So I appreciate it, but also that's what we're supposed to do.
Thank you for reminding us of that. But we also still really appreciate your leadership this session and your partnership. I would like to now turn our attention to chatting with Shelia Babb Anderson. Sonia Campion and the Campion Foundation have been key partners of Away Home Washington since day one. They're really part of our founding funders, as I call them. Sonia couldn't make it today, but we're really lucky to have Shelia here. And like I said, Shelia is a very skilled advocate in her own right. And we're happy to have you here today, Shelia. Can you tell us about the role Campion has played relative to the evolution of the Anchor Community Initiative and what you see as value about this focused effort to prevent youth and young adult homelessness?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Really happy to be here today and just to see everyone on this call and taking some time to just really stop and reflect about, what amazing legislative session we had. So thank you. So as you mentioned, we've been supporting Away Home Washington and the Anchor Community Initiative since its inception. And I'm just so excited by the progress that's being made. I think we support this work because we have so many things in our state that we think can be really catalytic for ending youth and young adult homelessness. We have strong support from the governor, the legislature, and the Office of Homeless Youth. We have a shared value that young people know what will work for them and should be leading the solutions. We know that we should center young people of color and LGBTQIA youth in our responses if we want to see equitable outcomes. We have philanthropy that's willing to support innovative ideas. And we have an amazing network of service providers and advocates around the state who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do the hard work. And that's, and that really is what's so amazing about the Anchor Community Initiative, is that it combines all of these strengths to make community level change, changes that we hope can be replicated around the state, and I think even around the country. You're proving that we can figure out what works in each community and create systems that can be equity driven, data driven, and honest about what is needed to make sure that young people have what they need. And that's something I think every community in the country can learn from.
Sheila, thank you so much, and for living out those beliefs as well, by participating. Not only you're on Away Home Washington's board and have been for some time, but also that you were part of the advocacy team and helping move the work forward this session in particular. So shout out and appreciation to you personally, as well as the foundation. We also have other foundation partners that I haven't seen here today, but I know that Casey Troopin from the Rakes Foundation also really represented this session to help with the success. Well, I want to wrap us up and again extend incredible appreciation for all of you who were here. Every single person here that I've been able to see has played a key role in this movement and continues to play key roles. I think about Jim Theophilus, who daily, as we were in this advocacy, I thought to myself, paved the way that we were even talking maintenance budget. And that was a Herculean effort to get us to that point. And I also think about, the conversations that happen kind of behind the scenes and folks who don't get seen for that. But I also just really want to remind us that this was really a grassroots effort, and that there were so many folks, including young people who, I'm telling you, we had 3 days that we had a learning session convening, our first in-person since the pandemic in Tacoma. And young people had been there the Tuesday through Thursday. The rest of us were just kind of there for the most part on Wednesday and Thursday, but they still showed up. Like, I was exhausted at the end of the week, and they had to have been more exhausted, and they still showed up 7 a.m. in Olympia, and we descended. So I just want to love on y'all who did that. It was a really big deal. And I also just want to foreshadow that we are building a statewide advocacy team, and a team that is really coming together, who are deep in the community and close to the bone of what's happening in your community. And some of you are going to have, as Kim said, shared experiences that we can come together and have power around. But I think some of your communities also have unique things going on that we have to think about. How can we support one another? And I would even say that not all of our advocacy should be focused on just a state legislative session. There's a lot of local things that are happening with city councils where really good work can go to die, or really good work can be brought to be elevated and funded and supported, like the Homeless Prevention and Diversion Fund. We would love to see communities rally around that and put some local resources into that. And we also know that there are systems out there that have problematic policies and things that they're doing or not doing. I know our legal aid friends know this in spades too. So how can we come together and really look at those blocks? So this summer, Rep. Riccelli, we're going to take your advice too. We're taking our show on the road, and we're going to go see local representatives. We want to work in community with that. But we are going to have a year-long, ongoing advocacy work, not just during the legislative session, to keep moving this work forward. and the use of strategic communications to help. So don't forget that. So look out for a follow-up email that will have this video. So folks that we were loving on that weren't able to make it, please forward this on to them. But just want to appreciate you all for taking this time before lunch to really meet and continue in the movement. So happy Pride, everyone.